Why did the number of illegal immigrants crossing the US-Mexico border increase so dramatically in March 2019? And what are the links between human trafficking across the southern border and illegal immigration? What are some of the harsh realities of the experiences of people who have been trafficked? And why are US Hispanics supporting President Trump now in record numbers? This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek. Today we sit down with Anna Paulina, an anti-human trafficking advocate who is also Director of Hispanic Engagement for Turning Point USA. We discuss the border crisis, human trafficking facilitating a modern form of slavery, organizations that are working to stop this, and possible solutions. Anna, wonderful to speak with you again.
Thank you for having me.
So let's dive right in here. You were telling me the other day about how you recently were at the border working on a documentary with Turning Point USA. And I'm wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about what you experienced out there.
So right now with this whole immigration debate, right, we're seeing a lot of people mention this human trafficking word, but there's not a lot of information, I think, for your everyday person that really compiles the stats, shows you the stories as to really what's happening down there. So what I basically did is I sat down one day and I wrote down literally the episodes, went down to the border, got people who are dealing directly with this process or this problem of human trafficking, the illegal immigration, the drugs. So ranging from law enforcement to border patrol agents to people that are actually working with these counter trafficking agencies that are going in and literally taking kids out of these situations to sit down and tell their story. And so it's going to be a 13-part episode basically that we're going to be streaming on all of our digital media platforms so that people who might not have access to cable television or might not be able to subscribe to certain channels, that they'll be able to have the information. They're going to be able to see directly what's happening down there.
Great. So you mentioned human trafficking, and I know that's something that's very close to your heart. You've been involved with an organization that focuses specifically on this, a veterans organization.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you've done with that group, and then we'll explore the human trafficking piece.
So Veterans for Child Rescue is the organization that really, I like to tell people, it lifted my blindfold as to what was really happening in this country, specifically at the border. I got with the organization probably in December of 2 years ago, really before you saw the media shift into really focusing on this immigration debate and topic. And what I realized with this organization through just looking at the footage and then doing my own digging is that yes, there is a crisis. This is modern day slavery, but what's horrifying about this is that you have the exploitation of children. And for me, as adults, people can be really bad sometimes, right? So like sometimes when we see other adults suffering, it might to a lot of people not really come across as that big of a problem, right? But when you have children and you go down there and you're talking to agents, or you see footage of trees that literally or like bushes that have underwear on them, or you're hearing the stories of what these agents are talking about how they come across the raped kids, that to me, that is at the point at which I say, no, this needs to stop. And that this is not a partisan issue. This is an issue that we know is happening. This has been happening for a long time. And it's almost by God's grace that now we're being forced to deal with this, because this has been something that if we don't deal with it now, when is it going to stop? We are leading out this nation. We are setting an example to the rest of the world, and we do not allow slavery in this country. So why is it now that this is becoming politicized and being used as propaganda to really keep Hispanics in this mindset of, if you don't want to support the border, that you're apparently betraying your race and really turning us into single issue voters?
Fascinating. So I understand there's about 18,000 women
annually
documented that were trafficked in 2018. Is that?
It's the 2018 human trafficking report
Right.
that the State Department put out.
Okay.
Says that 18,000 women annually are trafficked along the U.S.-Mexico border.
And what are the numbers for children? Because I'm not aware of that.
So UNICEF did a piece on it, and I don't know if you guys are going to be posting the information, but you can find it on my Twitter. 16,000 children estimated have been victims of human trafficking. These are just the children that they've been able to come across. These are very rough numbers. One of the most horrific stories that I heard of personally was from a Border Patrol agent, and this will be in the documentary, where he's telling us a story about how he came across a group of men that were being forced to run drugs across the border, right? So a lot of times what people don't understand is when they're coming across these big groups of people, whether or not they're moving loads of drugs, they're not being given an option. A lot of times they'll hold their family members and basically say, if you don't do this, we're going to kill these people. This happens on a regular basis. So he came across...
These are the cartels?
Yes, this is the organized crime, the cartels that are literally just right on the other side of the border. He was telling us how he had come across this group and he realized that the men and women were separate. And when he sat down and he was talking to the women, he was kind of asking them what happened, found out that they had been separated, and then towards the end he noticed one of the women in particular was really upset. She was crying, and in Spanish she tells Art, she goes, where's my child? And he goes, what are you talking about? We haven't found any kids. So what they found out is that they had separated the men from the women from the children, and that they relocated the men and the women, but they took the children. And they still haven't been able to find them to this day. And that happens on a regular basis. With this whole issue of bringing over the family units, a lot of times, and now what's happening, which is, in my opinion, horrifying, is you have these families being kept together. We don't know if they're even biologically related. This is a correlated issue with the trafficking. This happens on a regular basis. And so knowing these stories, knowing that we have this now catch and release program to where they come in, they have a kid with them, it may or may not be their child, and then they're released. We don't know what's happening to that child. They might not show up to their court dates. And so yes, it is an issue. Yes, we should be taking a strong stance on it, because if we don't, people on both sides are going to continue to get hurt, especially the children.
So the children are basically being used as pawns to facilitate this legal loophole. That's what you're alluding to here, right?
Yes, to facilitate the legal loophole. And then on top of that, they're sold. I mean, the difference between a human and drugs is that you can sell a human time and time again. And I remember I was telling you about Carla. Okay, 43,000 times she was raped in a 4-year period. It totaled to 36 men a day, 7 days a week, no time off. You hear her story. She actually went and addressed Congress on C-SPAN. You can watch all this stuff. This is not a made-up number. But when you hear the way that these people are treated, to know that a child is raped, murdered, exploited, whatever it might be, that is horrifying. And we need to take a moral stance against this and say that you might do that in your country, but it is not accepted here. And we are not going to facilitate or allow this to continue happening. And if we have to make changes in government, we will, to make sure that that's not happening any further from this point forward.
In terms of the numbers of people coming across, right? We're hearing numbers of 100,000 people in the last month.
Yes, March, according to Border Patrol, was the highest month of apprehensions for illegal crossings in over a decade. 100,000 people were caught trying to come across the border. I believe the number it's up 143% from last year, and that absolutely has to do with what's happening in the media with focusing on this. And I personally hold legislators accountable for that, because you have Hispanic legislators that are race baiting, turning this immigration thing into a race issue. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with someone's national origin, and everything to, one, realizing that without borders we aren't a country, two, that there's correlated issues, and three, we have the right to ensure that there's no slavery in this country and to secure that and enforce those policies in any way, shape, or form we so choose.
So, some people might say, well, with all these people coming across, the human trafficking is such a small part. Like, have you heard this argument? My first television interview ever was on Fox News, and I was on Jesse Waters, and I was talking to a woman who's a self-proclaimed feminist, and she had the nerve to tell me that human trafficking numbers are at an all-time low under this administration, because the administration, surprise, surprise, is actually doing their job. To me, 18,000 women is not an all-time low.
When was this?
This was my very first time on Fox, so this was probably, I want to say, back in maybe August timeframe, around that timeframe. That is not an all-time low. Even if it were 200 people, that's too many. So for people to really diminish this, to take that number to say, oh, well, it's not high enough. I mean, what's high enough? What's the value of one human life? But then to realize that these people aren't even treated like human beings, they're treated a lot of times less than animals. You then, I think, at that point in time, have the decision to make. Either you go along with what the mainstream is saying is socially acceptable and is okay, or you say, no, I don't believe in this. I believe that we should be standing up, that this is the right thing to do. And then you tell people, and it does get hard, because you come up against a lot of scrutiny, because a lot of people, like you said, they're just not aware of what's happening down there. And then you have people politicizing this. you have to do what's right. And that's why I'm here today talking to you.
So can you tell me a little bit more about Carla, this just terrible case study, I guess, and Unidos Via Trata, which is the organization that she's working with now?
So this is exactly the types of stories that people need to hear. So this is an organization that is in Mexico, and they also work in the United States to get these women out of these horrific situations. So what a lot of people don't realize, and when I'm talking to people about this, I will bring up the fact that CNN actually wrote an article on Carla. This is how big of an issue that this is. And so what they will do is they'll take these women, they help, get them on their feet. And also, too, there's a lot of emotional trauma that goes along with this. So they're there for that.
Unimaginable, frankly. Like, I just can't, I don't even know what to say or think with that
situation. It's so,
just for me, inspiring knowing that these women are coming out of these situations and that someone like Carla is now an activist for this and that she speaks out for this. So after everything that's happened for her, she's now working with this organization to help other women, but they do also help these women secure T visas, which a lot of people aren't aware is something that the State Department has in place for if you are a victim of trafficking or, work slave labor, you can actually apply for these and then you essentially have the right to stay in the United States. And so that is something that I think a lot of people don't realize. There are people in government that care. These programs are set up in place to, really take these people out of these horrific situations and help them in the future. But this organization, if we can really have a sit down with Turning Point and allow them to get us the stories of these women, I think that is what transcends politics, right? Those stories of these women who have been brought into this country, those are the stories that people need to hear.
Clearly we can see the reasons behind your passion to deal with this human trafficking issue. Irrespective, some people, I think, might be surprised that as a Latina, you're, basically supporting border security and
absolutely.
You're so serious about it. Do you get that kind of a response? What do people say?
So initially, at first, when I first came out, basically as a conservative, and then really started talking about the issues that were near and dear to my heart, so the trafficking, right? So that's really above anything political. I've always been working with this. At first, I got a lot of negative responses. In fact, I had a lot of comments about the color of my skin, that I'm biracial, whatever it might be. But then I realized that the more I spoke out about it, the more I saw little people, like little platforms start to pop up on social media saying, I want you to know that I'm also, a Latino or Latina and I support you and that this is an issue and that we care about these people, but if it's not done the correct way, people get hurt in the process. And I think that when you have someone out there willing to set an example, that it inspires other people to really speak up and hold true to their values. So initially it was negative, now it's a lot of positive response. Okay. And we've actually been able to essentially realize that, going into 2020, the Hispanic vote's going to be very important, especially for this, right? You have this shift to all of a sudden in the last 2 years, they're now really focusing on the Hispanic demographic. They're saying that this is a race issue. It's an issue of keeping Hispanics out because, our president and our government is xenophobic, which is farthest from the truth. It's, in my opinion, when I heard President Trump talking about shutting down the border, absolutely shut it down. Take a hard stance against it because it needs to be dealt with. And when I saw people, it sounds kind of funny, but like when I saw people complaining that they wouldn't be able to get avocados, to me, that was horrifying because this, you're focused on avocados and there's children and women and LGBT and even sometimes men that are being forced into sexual rape, and you are focused on getting your guacamole at Chipotle. I could not understand. And so this is why I really hope that the president takes a hard stance and does force the hand of people in Congress and in Senate to deal with this.
So, human trafficking is one issue at the border. Drug trafficking, obviously, another massive issue, kind of fueling the opioid crisis. Immigration isn't the only issue. I don't even know if it's the biggest issue.
It's so immigration is so tied into everything else that's taking place. People like to say it's just it's an easy topic. It's not, because you do have the aspect of it directly impacting all communities across the board, whether they're Black, white, or Hispanic, with the drug problem. The drugs come into these communities. They fuel these vicious cycles that tie into the welfare programs, that tie into the violence, tie into keeping these communities impoverished, and to really result in a lot of heartache
to Americans across the board. I mean, when people are coming here, and if they're coming here legally, they will never be able to attain the American dream. So what do they resort to? Sometimes they do resort to selling drugs because that's how they support their family. And even then, so it still might, in their opinion, be better than living somewhere like Mexico or in South America. But that's not okay here. And so when you're talking to people and you're saying, well, it's not just a simple fix. Like, this is the problem that we have. Here's a really big solution that we know will help stop a lot of these bad things that are happening. Now, it might not 100% ever get rid of the fact that we're going to have people still trying to bring in drugs. But guess what? When you have a physical barrier there, you're going to prevent and deter a lot of people from trying to do it in the first place.
So you actually have family on both sides of the border, and you're saying you're okay with closing the border.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, and I'm okay with it because I realize that on both sides, if it's not done now, if we don't deal with this right, it's just going to continue to happen. Breitbart did an article on this where they literally showed photos from a journalist that risked their lives to get Breitbart the photos of this, okay? Because if you come out in Mexico and you're a journalist reporting on the cartels, they will kill you. And there was photos of decapitated and dismembered bodies that were dropped along the highway pretty close to our border. And that's what's happening on a regular basis. You have places like Juarez that has femicide. They will literally brutally rape and then dismember, whatever, torture these women, take photos of it. And this is all intimidation tactics. This is something that's happening right in our backyard. And it is absolutely related to our policies, just like we see the surge in immigration, illegal immigration right now, because of how the media is covering it. It's inappropriate and irresponsible reporting, in my opinion. Because of that, we're seeing this big flux. We're seeing people that are, but people that are convicted offenders trying to gain access again, because they know right now, if they can come right now, they are going to have the backing of the left, of the DNC, to say, yes, come here legally. We don't want borders. I mean, that is such an irresponsible ideology and mindset to have. And it's in my opinion that the people that are in politics doing this right now, one, they're doing it so they can get reelected. They don't care about helping Hispanics. But then to those Hispanics that are there, they're race baiting. And they're doing it on purpose because they know that if you were to have, unfortunately, a conservative white male come up against a female Latina in Congress that's on the opposite side, she's going to say, I'm being attacked because of my race, and I'm a woman and I feel threatened. And that's wrong. And that's exactly why we need stronger people with Hispanic voices to speak out against this. And that's exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing right now.
Wow. So you've also encountered border security and ICE agents and so forth in your travels?
I've worked with Border Patrol and law enforcement, and then that does tie into these other agencies like ICE. But what's crazy to me is when you have elected officials calling for abolishing ICE, I like to put up the top 10 most wanted in the United States for human trafficking. 5 of the 10 were illegals coming from Mexico that were bringing in girls and women and children into this country. And so ICE is directly dealing with the issue of human trafficking. And you have people saying that they're racist and we need to abolish it. So what are you really trying to abolish? Human slavery? I mean, that's my response. And I don't know if these people are just choosing to ignore the facts or that they're doing it on purpose, because if you see these numbers, you know that these are not fudged numbers and that this is not fake reporting. Why would you not choose to back an organization like that?
So, I mean, it sounds to me almost like you think the politicized nature of the commentary, basically saying that having a barrier is a racist thing, using ICE is a racist thing, and so forth. And the people coming across knowing that they have a support of a significant portion of the population, that's actually fueling the increase in the numbers?
Yeah, it's fueling. What's happening is people in Mexico, people in South America, they're not dumb, they're watching our news. They know that right now they can come to the United States. I mean, you see what's happening. I think Kamala Harris posted a picture of the tents underneath an overpass, and she's like, this is a humanitarian issue. Absolutely right, Kamala, but you know why? It's because you're sitting here saying that we need to have open border and that these people deserve to come here. So they're coming here, and we have no idea who these people are, who they're exploiting, and what they're bringing in the process. So that's exactly my response to all of these people that are doing this. This argument should not be an argument. This is the right of a president, of a nation, to secure its borders. We are a nation with borders. Without them, we are nothing. But aside from that, knowing that there's this correlated issue with the drugs, knowing that Americans are affected, knowing that people are dying on both sides, and then you have the rape and murder and torture of children, We're supposed to be okay with that. And because I'm American and I happen to be Hispanic, then I'm only allowed to talk on it. Like, why is it now that it's turned into an issue of if you are not Hispanic and you talk on it, all of a sudden you're racist? They have taken the value away from that word. That is not racist to want to protect your people on both sides.
What is the next step? What would you like to see happen then in the next 2-3 months?
I'd like the president to shut down the border, and I don't care if he has to do it through the National Guard. I don't care if he has to do it from basically forcing the hand of Congress to deal with this, but I'd like to see an absolute immigration reform. I'd like to see them bring in work visas for people that are just trying to come here seasonally. I'd like to see the courts backed up with more judges and attorneys to help with this immigration issue. And we absolutely need a zero tolerance stance on illegal immigration, meaning if you come here, we're going to send you back, because by us allowing people to stay, we're only encouraging more to come and more people are going to be exploited in the process. Oh, and aside from that, I think that there needs to be an aspect of judicial reform to be that if you are trafficking, if you are caught bringing someone over, if you are caught buying someone, if you are caught exploiting a child, you need to go to jail and they need to throw away the key. If that, I mean, if in my opinion, if you are raping a child, you need the death penalty.
And there are also the asylum cases, like actually legitimate asylum cases of people. So you're presumably you're open to having those people heard, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
The people,
yeah.
Look what's happening in Venezuela, but they don't want to talk about that, right? If they say that Maduro is a bad idea, then there goes the whole democratic socialism platform. Yes, people like that should be given precedence for these asylum claims. And I'm sure that there are people that are fearing for their life, trying to escape that country, but they can't because they don't have the Second Amendment, because they have no way out. So absolutely, those people need to be given priority. And that's exactly why we need to not be making a joke of this whole asylum process. You have 1 in 10 people now coming to this country because they're claiming asylum claims. Because you don't like the gang violence taking place in your country, that is not a legit claim for asylum status. Okay, because you don't like what's happening in your economy, that's not a legit claim. If you are in fear from your government and you're going to be persecuted, that's an asylum claim. But to have a joke and a mockery made of it because you want to come here and you want to cut the line, too bad. There's 4 million people waiting to come here. You need to wait your turn.
Understand. So we were talking a little bit earlier about, it seems like you're telling me there's more people kind of speaking up in the Hispanic community about their more conservative perspective. That's not something that's typically associated. I think I heard that there's hundreds of groups even in Washington, D.C. alone.
I think the number is, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
The number is around 200 Hispanic conservative groups. The thing is that, doing what I'm doing, especially with Turning Point being outreach, I haven't really seen a movement. I haven't heard anything of really like these groups working together. So it would be ideal in the near future to have these groups come together and then all work to show face, to show representation, to say, hey, we're here, we're conservative first and foremost, we are Hispanic, and we support immigration policies because of X, Y, and Z issues. But that'll hopefully, that's something that we're working on in the near future. And then I will actually be back in DC at the beginning of May with an organization called Bienvenido. And so that's basically changing the outreach message to conservative Hispanics to say, hey, look, we're here for you guys. We're here to show fair representation and to make sure that DC listens to you and listens to your needs and wants from the community, because immigration for many Hispanics is tied. It's close to the home. It's, our families are over there. But the problem is people don't realize that, one, if you don't have fair representation, that people aren't going to fix the issue because it turns people into voters, and voters equals power. But aside from that we have to hold them accountable, because if we don't, this issue is never going to get fixed. So there's an organization called Bienvenido that I'm working with now that's going to hopefully bring together the entire conservative Hispanic base and make sure that DC's carrying through with what they're saying to work on issues of immigration.
This is actually curious to me. Hispanics have a lot of what you would consider conservative values, but They don't seem to vote that way.
They don't vote that way because, unfortunately, in the media, in Telemundo, Univision, you have really leftist-leaning mentalities. And then so when you're trying to break through to these people and you're showing look, though, we're Catholic, we're Christian, we're not pro-abortion, we care about our families, but this is the issue with immigration. A lot of it is for the people that are newly here or for first gen. Sometimes it can be a language issue and barrier, but that's exactly why you need people within those communities to go and talk to them, because just like we are a loyal community, we're also distrusting of politics, and for good reasons, right? A lot of people, if you're smart, you're not going to go into politics just trusting anyone. But what's happening now is you have over 50% of Hispanics supporting the president. And aside from that, we're really realizing, hey, look, we're not all dumb here. Like, we can think for our own. And you have multiple people on many platforms that are now reaching out back into the community and basically saying, hey, we're here, we want representation, come on. And that's what's happening now.
And so this group that's bringing together all these organizations, is it just in DC or national?
No, it's national. We actually have, I don't even want to call them Instagram influencers. I hate that term. They're activists. We have activists in Florida, Texas, California, Arizona. And so what we're doing is we're basically bringing people on board. This is a message for everyone. It's not just one person's fight to save the nation. So, and what's incredible about that is when you empower other people to use their platforms, they take that personally and they run with it. And they have that passion. And so we're hoping to unite the base. We're going to be here in DC addressing Congress on issues of national security, immigration, and education. So what we're hoping to see is once that takes place, then, if we can get the blessing by the White House to say, hey, we recognize that there's a conservative Hispanic base, which there absolutely is. You watch what happens in 2020 and leading out really to the future, because now, according to pewhispanic.org, we are the largest voting minority, and we will continue to grow.
Great place to finish up, Anna. Thank you very much.